Greetings and salutations, viewers and listeners. Welcome to another episode of Game Break. I am Charles, coming to today with another episode of World End Economica, where last time round we went all in, all hands on deck, to raise the money to save the neighborhood. We even went so far as to try and call in what favors we could with Barton, and he didn't outright support us, but he may have given us a few tips or hints as to how we might focus our efforts on the final day of fundraising. So, you know what? Let's see how that pays off. Will it be enough? And then I spoke. I will show you my investing technique. Seeing me like that, Hagana's eyes became round as she looked at me blankly. Sunday, Hagana and I slept. We slept as much as possible. I gave detailed instructions to Lisa that she was to keep out anyone waiting on us for some good news on the situation. On Monday, everything was on the line. For that reason, we rested up to recover our strength. That was all we could do. Saturday night we slept. Then Sunday morning we got up to eat, and afterwards went back to sleep. I wasn't sure when Hagana crawled into my bed, but I didn't think much of that. I was fine with it since Hagana was relaxed too. In any case, we slept and slept. As if our two bodies had fused together somehow, we slept. Thus, as if somehow knowing when exactly to wake up, the both of us woke at the same time and found that it was just the start of Monday at midnight. Hagana and I looked at each other. I wasn't sure which of us woke up first. But for a brief moment, Hagana and I both held our breath. The feeling when our lips touched was softer and then sweeter than anything in this world. At the same time, we said nothing. Instead, we decided with little trouble, what to do after we got up. Carlyle Investment? As Hagana sat at her chair, she said that while starting up her terminal. I wondered if this was Hagana's way to get energized. She grasped her hair like she was going to curl it, then brushed it before letting that beautiful black hair flutter down. Yeah. At my words, Hagana brought up the stock information. This, then? While looking, sitting next to Hagana, I squeezed out each word. Short sell it. Hagana said nothing. Instead, she opened her program and, putting all her effort to supporting me, she started manipulating and calculating figures. Barton pointed to this stock while mentioning that it would rain on Monday. On top of that, suddenly there was news about rain. Without a doubt, it was insider information. And with regards to this company, there was some bad news flowing. Someone like Barton would have some connection to many hundreds of companies, and he'd certainly be listening in on thousands of people and what they had to say. Especially since Monday comes right after the weekend, when bad things are prone to happen. There have been situations such as a superior CEO taking one of his company's own manufactured bikes and riding it off a cliff to his death. Naturally, a company losing a great leader would lead to the stock hitting the lower variable price limit. You wouldn't know what would happen. That is why there are many cases of price drops the day before the weekend. Everyone would close positions that were in danger of any risk. Given that, this is probably the best company then. As the name suggested, Carlyle Investment was an investment company. Whether it were securities, real estate, or commodities, if it could be traded, then they dealt in it with a lack of any real fidelity. There were no accurate details from them. Based on that, it was unclear what, if anything, might happen. Annual earnings were not stable, with one year reaping in enormous profits, and the next year take a big loss. It was common for them to say that they made consecutive large profits. That is why, for a gambling enterprise such as them, they drew out those who enjoy gambling. Even on Hagana's program, it displayed jaw-dropping price fluctuations.
Terrible company.
So it seems.
But it is really sensitive to trading.
Looking at the screen from one side of Hagana, I could see her collarbone. The word sensitive actually gave me a bit of a jolt. I felt like smacking my head for being an idiot while Hagana tilted her head with a question mark over it. If we sell it all at
once, I think it will drop.
That will be good enough. We only have 1 day to trade after all. If it drops at that time, then that's good enough.
But will this really work?
She asked worriedly. I suppose anyone would be in doubt and wonder if my head was on straight if I suddenly came back in high spirits and declared that I knew which stock will drop tomorrow. On top of that, I didn't clearly understand what information I had received, as most of that was certainly grounded in insider information. Since I was a minor, I didn't think I would be judged by the penal code, but if I did get caught, then I most likely couldn't return to the normal investment world. But there's no way I would get caught. Odds are that I won't get caught. Frankly, there are much worse things happening in society. I will undertake it. In God's name. Hagana frowned. You can laugh.
Imprudence.
I felt that was a rather elegant word for Hagana to use. But this is difficult.
Difficult.
Yeah. Will the news come first thing in the morning? But that wouldn't be in time. I couldn't make money if it hit the stop floor with the orders entered before trading. Barton would have known about something like that. If that were the case, it may come right in the middle of trading. Thinking in normal terms, it would be best if the start of trading would coincide with the commencement of full-strength selling. However, instead of wild price fluctuations, Carlyle Investment's day-to-day trade volume was low. Compared to the funds I wanted to trade with, the trade volume was overwhelmingly low. This was a return to the last day of the investment contest. If there was a large sell-off, then buys will be low, so naturally the volume will drop. For example, if you sold 700,000 mools worth of stock valued at 1,000 mools a share, If buy orders at 1,000 mools a share amounted to only 10,000 mools total, my order would clear at a lower price. If liquidity was low, then the price will move due to your trading. It was possible for a price to hit close to the daily limit for a price drop. Not to mention, it was more likely the case after negative news came out. I would be at my wit's end if right after selling, the daily limit for price drops was reached. In the end, in theory, all that could be done was to sell bit by bit. I had my worries and misgivings about it, but time continued to move unabated as the market opened. In order to not cause the buyers to scatter, we sold off shares stealthily. If there were a big drop, it had to happen after we sold big. Hagana was not aware of this insight. Carlyle's investment's starting price was 1,072 mools, but at the start of trading, it didn't move for the most part. It wasn't because of the news or any major changes in the market either, so one could say that it was only natural. Thus, if I sold 10,000 mools worth, I'd wait 10 minutes for 5,000 mools worth. I'd wait 5 minutes. I didn't know when the news was going to come out, and it was putting my stomach into knots. Hagana was fidgeting next to me like she wanted to go to the toilet. Quickly, if I was going to sell, I'd have to sell more. But I continued to use prudence as I sold. Doing that through the morning, I sold up to 220,000 mools worth. At that point, it was the highest trade volume amount in a month. Most likely, people should have taken notice on the net.
How much left?
500,000 mools. This is taking forever. But the news didn't come out during the afternoon recess, and the increase in volume was soon detected as people started to gather. Buyers lined up with their gathered funds, while there were sellers other than ourselves lined up with orders as well. Alongside the afternoon opening, pretending to take advantage of the sell-off, in one stroke I had a short sale of 70,000 mools. As if pressing on some elastic rubber, after making a slight dent, the buyers came in and the price returned to its starting point. Logically speaking, there was no reason for the price to drop, so the buying did not seem strange at all. Holding my eagerness in check, I ignored the other sellers. This time, after 30 minutes, I sold off 50,000 mools worth. There was still half of it remaining. The price fluctuation held in place miraculously, with little change compared to the previous day. The time had just reached 2 o'clock. Was it about time for the news to come out? Or could it be that it would arrive after trading ended? I really didn't know when business news would come out. If it were an announcement of the settlement of accounts, then the announcement would be made after the market closed in the case of companies trying to cause chaos. But frequently that information got leaked to journalists who publicized that information, and I hoped that wouldn't be the case here. No matter what time the news was announced, hopefully it would be that. If it was something like a bolt out of the blue, then maybe it'd be appropriate to say, God only knows. After that, I sold 40,000 mools and crossed over the halfway mark.
It's a strange feeling. This is my first time trading like this.
At Hagana's words, I looked up. The living room was as it usually was, but she was right that it did seem weird. Lisa said that she really didn't want to watch how things unfolded today, and had stepped out. Due to that, perhaps it was too quiet. I don't know.
Is this trading?
Hagana asked. She was probably this talkative to the unbearable tension. Yes, it's a method of trading that I have seen in Newton City. Another buy appeared and 10,000 mules worth was sold. Another selling appeared, but as expected, the buys became unsteady. Perhaps the pace was a bit too quick. I thought for a moment.
Hey, Hal.
Hagana called my name and looked at me. Hagana gazed at me. What?
Hal, are you going to leave here?
You're going to talk about this now? To be clear, I thought that, but to Hagana that might have been the most important matter. If that were the case, then I couldn't just ignore it now. I looked back at the computer while nodding. Or rather, in exchange for following him, he shared that bit of information with me. Hagana was a bit speechless. It occurred to me that I had chosen my words incorrectly. Hagana had been sold off on Earth. I learned from him, and when I turned to leave, he stood up on a table, and that's how he told me. Another 50,000 mules sold. The price dropped, then returned quickly. He said, "Godspeed, young one. The key to winning the future is in your hands." I really was happy at that. It was in a place people could see, not to mention in the cafe of a high-class hotel. He is a really good person.
More than Lisa?
Hagana asked. Compared to Lisa, well, the genres are totally different.
Genre?
Like the gender or something. During the time I was talking, another 70,000 mules was sold. 510,000 mules sold. Due to the rate of price drop, soon it would be within range. Although buyers retreated slowly from the battlefront, they did not lose their fighting spirit. The stock price continued to resist at 1,064 mules. That should have cut off buying.
Because he's a male?
Yeah.
Well, what if that person were female?
You shouldn't ask strange questions like that, I thought as I chuckled a bit.
What's so funny?
Nothing, if he was female. Thinking about a female version of Barton did make me laugh. If that were the case, then Lisa.
Really?
Hagana sighed in relief. What was that all about? As I asked, Hagana said this quietly.
I don't want you to leave.
She did not hesitate. It was one of two possibilities. Either she'd hide her emotions or she wouldn't. That couldn't be effective. I can't. As I answered, 80,000 mules was sold. As expected, the buying side was now agitated. The price got over the 1,060 wall. Nevertheless, everything was as agreed at 590,000 mules. All that was left was 130,000.
For the sake of your dream?
Hagana asked. Right.
Lucky.
Hagana quietly looked at me, almost like a child would. I want that toy too. Her eyes said that to me. but it wasn't the right sort of place for Hagana. I remember when Barton turned down my request for funds. That was not a righteous route. If possible, I wanted Hagana and Lisa to never know such a place as that in their lifetimes. It'd be good if you had dreams of your own. I prepared a 30,000 mool sell order. Hagana grabbed that hand. What is it now? You aren't going to find that dream in my hand, you know. I said that with a strained smile, and Hagana's face stiffened. What?
It's here.
Huh?
It's here.
Hagana repeated herself like a stubborn child and squeezed my hand. The screen showed the beginnings of the tug-of-war between sellers and buyers, with the advantage tilted towards the sellers. With the explosion in trade volume, the persistent sell-offs were beginning to draw people in who were suspicious that maybe some sort of negative news was going to come out. I didn't know where they were going to announce details about the stocks. Not restricted to the main news outlets, if industry-oriented media were to make an announcement, there would also be a possibility that an announcement would happen at seminars geared toward institutional investors. What both had in common was that at that moment, wherever that announcement was made, it would then affect the stock prices. That was why it was normal to wonder if such information may come out where one would least expect, when there's a chance of turbulent price fluctuations. The sellers were on the offensive. Now was the only time to sell, but I didn't move. Though she seemed powerless, in the grasp of Hagana's hand I couldn't move much.
There is here.
As Hagana said that, she looked up. Those weren't lightless, dark eyes. They were powerful eyes that sought one's hopes.
I want to...
Hagana earnestly withstood the urge to cry as she said it.
live in peace with everyone.
The lunar surface was a place where people had the wildest of dreams. But it was a place where many people drifted who couldn't even enjoy the bare minimum of happiness. Hagana was one of them. And this girl's dream was to live in peace with everyone. It was so natural, but simultaneously so difficult. Just searching through my memory, I could recall many examples like that. There were probably very few people's faces that Hagana could remember. Her head was filled to the brim with mathematics, with no room for anything else to be absorbed. First on that list of faces was Lisa, probably. And my name was in there as well. I looked back at Hagana, and her face became strained as she looked downcast. Perhaps my face was one of those as well. Perhaps it was within reason to be able to live together with others. But to live in peace was absolutely impossible. Recalling how Barton Cladwyson denied my request, it was very clear to me. Investors did not make their living investing. It personified people who lived only for investing above anything else. For someone like me, ignorant in the ways of society, if I were to live the way that Barton did, for starters, I'd be well aware that danger lay in wait for me. Betrayal and schemes, that was everything to people, perhaps. Jumping straight into that world, I would feel insecure about being able to bask in the sun with Lisa in the garden on the 3rd floor. And I would think I shouldn't even be doing something like that. Being an investor was a lifestyle. If one wanted a warm, milk and honey way of life, then this was certainly not the path to take. I couldn't shake off Hagana's hand, and pulled mine gently from it. I must decline. I said it softly, much as Barton said it to me. I put out a 30,000 mule sell order. During this state of reduced activity, the price fluctuations reacted in response. The wall of the tens digit at 1,050 was scaled, going up to 1,051 mules a share. I will make these profits and go to Schrödinger Street. The stock price would drop little by little at times, like someone losing their footing while climbing a set of stairs. 620,000 mules worth had already been sold, and at that point the profits were starting to reach 10,000 mules. Honestly, though, it was really only a small change. I steeled my nerves. I wasn't bluffing when I said I considered it small change. My thoughts were that with the several tens, nay hundreds of billions of mules that controlled the future, I were to rise above that money and imagine gazing upon something no one else had ever seen. Just as Barton had said, funding those in need and collecting interest as a form of gratitude was something that a boring division within a boring bank should do.
In that case,
Hagana uttered those words.
In that case, make money. At the very least, make money.
Hagana was angry. But at that moment, I realized that there was something to be happy about even when her expression was angry. I'll make money. I'll make heaps. I returned my gaze to the computer screen. In my mind was the powerful figure of Barton giving me a pep talk while standing on top of that cafe table. This here is the way they trade on Schrödinger Street. It blew past everything, whether it was mathematical assistance or even intuition through experience. Insider? That wasn't it. This was an extreme way of trading that only humans could do. Hagana's program was certainly impressive, but there was no room for human judgment. Cold and sharp, it was without equal. Humans who used that no longer had their human dignity, as it was reinforced that they should toss out the need to think.
How?
This is why when Hagana suddenly called out my name, my mouth laughed by itself. The falling stock price stopped falling and changed direction. If there was no rational reason why it dropped, then there was no reason at all for it to go up. It was the atmosphere, so to speak. It was all about the atmosphere, and I rose up from the screen as my chest sucked in that atmosphere. It will work. No matter where. What was left in my hands was 100,000 mule sell order. As the buys went out, the stock price was like the main character of a story, always getting up no matter how many times he was knocked down. As it got up unsteadily, 1052, 1051, 1052, 1053. In a fictional world, the bad guy would kindly wait for the main character to stand up, but that was not true for reality. You take down who you could, when you could, completely. A similar believer in the philosophy of investing was struck down mercilessly in one blow. 40,000 mules sold. I could almost see the faces of the buyers on the other side of the screen after their fruitless efforts. The stock price marched on down, 10,052, 1051, 1050, and breached the insufficient defenses as it continued to down to 1049, 1048. This was the downward pattern. Advantage-seeking sellers came out. 1046, 1044, 1041, as it sped up. Even if there is no news, I'll get away with selling it all. Just when I thought I'd make a full power swing with the remaining 100,000 mools.
Hal!
Hagana's sharp voice stopped my hand, and right afterwards, the stock price stopped moving. It wasn't because things were entering a state of reduced activity. The moment I saw it, that glimpse told me enough. During trading, when a rather large order came out, it would get stored up for a bit in order to stop an instantaneously large price fluctuation. It was almost like how everything in a cartoon goes into slow motion when someone uses a finishing move. And then, what got accumulated became something like a time bomb that you knew had a delayed explosion. At 1038 mools, like molten magma, a massive buy came in. The total amount of 230,000 mools was like a massive meteorite slamming into a planet, taking everyone with it, and that amount continued to grow. Was a sell-off coming? If so, then I was going to make some buys. News related to Carlyle Investments still hadn't come out. Someone, angered by the ruse that was the seller's offensive, put out a buy order aiming to raise the price. For as many as expected the price to go down, just as many expected it to go up. That was how market prices took shape. Hagana clung to my arm desperately. This was different from the time during the investment contest. This real money was going to take a massive hit. The stock price crept up stealthily. An overwhelming amount of money pushed it up. We were using margin selling, so when the price went up, the profits would disappear. And if we did something wrong, then we'd be at a loss. The people entering the buy orders were surely aiming for that scenario. But I didn't glance at Hagana at all as I quietly focused on the screen. I wasn't a bit flustered, since I had Barton's information. This was important if we wanted our orders to completely envelop the buy orders. No matter how much the price went up, if rain fell, as Barton said it should, then it would hit the variable price limit. If it was a stock that seemed like a strong gamble, then even a trivial bit of news would be enough to cause its price to fluctuate wildly. Firstly, without a doubt, a limit on the price drop would occur. If that were to happen, then more margin selling at higher prices. The profits would be higher when it returns to cheap buys. For someone like Hagana, who built a foundation upon mathematics and statistics, it wasn't a stunt worth trying. Each time the price slowly crept up, Hagana squeezed my arm with more strength. The price surpassed 1060 and reached 1065 to 1066, 1065, 1066, and 1067 it went, opposite to how it was earlier while also changing at a faster rate. As we had exceeded our required funds, the losses were starting to appear. At the stock price now at 1071, we were plus minus 0 from the day before. It was the moment when sellers and buyers were both on the offensive and defensive, resisting each other. And then, at that instant, the price started to climb up. Trade volume exploded, and the movements became extreme as more people caught wind of the situation. I did not panic. I was determined not to panic. But that was not the case for Hagana.
Hal, something is weird.
Huh?
It's weird. Why is it not going down even with all that selling?
Why do bad things keep happening, was what she asked, like an innocent girl. Hagana was used to misfortune. She's dealt with a lot of struggles before. She was used to it. That was why she was not used to thinking about what would happen next. Dealing with the outcome was my duty. While I looked straight at the screen, I answered, "It's only natural because the news hasn't come out. The conditions for sellers and buyers is 50-50. But I know that this stock will go down, so no matter what, it is necessary to sell early. Due to that, it dropped first. But no one else knows the information that I got a hold of, so they resisted by buying in response and it went up. That is only natural. Didn't I say before that trading was like rock, paper, scissors, where you saw someone's move beforehand? This was especially true for stocks that attracted gambling types. One would be used to such speculative movement."
But,
Hagana murmured as she let go of my arm. And then slowly, she went to her terminal and fiddled with it. Hagana inputted the numbers in her program, and I looked at the initial calculations. I said it was impossible.
but,
I told you it wasn't this type of trading, right? When the stock price went up steadily with a speed that was anything but slow, it was natural to feel pressure. But looking at Hagana, who relied on that program, I started to feel scorn towards it. For a program that we relied that much on, it felt like an old run-down computer we could no longer use. And Hagana, who relied on it, was like a little girl who consulted her horoscope for everything. So it was clear to me that she wasn't the sort of partner I'd want to trade with anymore. Give up already. It was difficult to see Hagana fall to that level, and I said that without another thought. And then Hagana answered.
this is all that I can do.
Her face was a mix of anxiety and nervousness. At my words, her face was not that of a cheeky girl who would have absolutely refuted me.
Where is the news?
It's not coming, is it? I could see through what she was implying with those reserved words, and I kept my mouth shut. The time was now 4 o'clock. It was late, but there was still 1 hour to go.
Hal, it really is strange. I don't know why the price won't go down.
I kept my mouth shut as Hagana continued.
Where is the news?
She asked once more, so I had no choice but to respond. There isn't any. According to Lisa, Toyama would come precisely at 5 o'clock. He requested a bank employee he was friends with to keep the counter open a bit longer. According to the schedule, it ended at the same time as trading ended, so all the money on hand would need to be withdrawn so the loan could be repaid. An hour left to go. In 1 hour, it would all be decided. And we're gonna have to find out if he pulls it off next time, because we are out of time. 1 hour to go, and the news hasn't dropped, so the price hasn't dropped. Are they gonna be able to pull it off, or is Barton playing shenanigans with them for a long-term game? We're gonna have to find out next time, but by all means post in the comments below what you think is going on, and how is this gonna play out? Not just plot-wise, but character-wise, because we got hit with a couple things this episode between Hal and Hagana that they're gonna have to address at some point before this wraps up, because no, you can't just give us those hints and snippets without playing it out. So hopefully we find out all the answers to these things next time. I'll see you then.